Today in math, we're going to be talking about using something called mental math. So, being able to do math in our heads, not necessarily having to write it down on paper. And in order to do that, first, we're going to look at some of these important vocabulary words. So, the first word that we're going to learn are factors. And so, factors are two or more numbers that you are going to multiply together to get the answer to a multiplication problem. And the answer to the multiplication problem is called the product. So just like when we're talking about the sum, if I was to say 2 plus 3 equals 5, this is the sum because it's the answer to an addition problem. If I was saying 4 times 2 equals 8, this is still the answer. But when we're talking about math, we say that the product of 4 groups of 2 is 8 because it's using multiplication. Okay, so when it's talking about the product, that just means it's the answer to a multiplication problem, multiplication equation. Okay. And then factors are the numbers that break up. So we talked about those math mountains before where we have the number up top and then we were doing the adding, like what numbers add up to it. And we can do that with multiplication as well. So if I have the number 24 as my product, the factors that make up this number could be 6 and 4. Right? I can break those numbers up. And we can break these numbers up smaller, but for right now we can say 6 times 4 is 24. I could also have maybe 12 times 2 instead. 12 times 2 is 24. Or maybe I could have 8 times 3 is 24. So there are a lot of different factor pairs that we can have when we're solving. So the product is the answer, and the factors are the pairs that you can multiply together to get that product. Now, when we're talking about mental math, we are talking about finding answers to problems just using our brain. And that's using a strategy that we already know how to do. So let's say I have 4 times 6. Well, if I know my 4s or my 6s, then I know that 4 times 6 is going to be 24. But now let's say that I have a lot of other things. If I have 4 times 60, 4 times 600, 40 times 60, 4,000 times 6. All of these look really challenging because now they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But actually, we're just going to do the exact same thing. We're going to do that strategy that we learned yesterday about how we can solve these big problems when we have zeros. So again, I'm just going to look at what my two main numbers are. So 4 times 6 is 24. And I covered up that 0 to get that answer. So I'm doing this. I'm covering up that 0. And so I'm just going to add it over here. So 4 times 60 is 240. Now, without covering them up, I can just see that there are 2 zeros. So I'm going to take 4 times 6, 24, and I'm going to add back in those 2 zeros. But now I have to add in my comma so that I can say thousands. Here is where it starts to get a bit bigger. So now I have, once again, I'm just going to look at 4 times 6. So 4 times 6 is 24. But now I have 1, 2, 3 zeros. I'm going to add in 1, 2, 3 zeros. And then I'm going to put my comma, starting over here, 1, 2, 3, comma. And then here as well, I'm only going to look at the first numbers, not the zeros first. 4 times 6 is 24. And I have 3 zeros. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3 zeros. So some of them, we might get the same number even though these do not look like you're going to give the same answer. So using that mental math is really important because it is noticing patterns from the ones that we do know how to solve so that when we get to these really big ones over here, that we can do them quickly in our head without having to do a whole bunch of dots. You didn't have to do 40, 600 times. You just knew 4 times 6 is 24 and you added 3 zeros.